I was like, no, that ain't going to be me. I'm not going to be known as that guy.
Same.
In about 3 seconds and we'll be live.
30, did you say, or 3?
Oh, 3. Good to go.
Oh, I guess we're live. All right. Well, everyone, we're continuing our interview series, just trying to connect with different people on relevant topics. Today, I'm very honored to have Randy Bryce. Randy, I really don't like introductions because you're here, you can talk about yourself. And so I would just say that most folks probably know you from running for Congress in Wisconsin in 2018. And so just talk a little bit about yourself and what drove you to run for office last time.
Well, I got very I mean, my background is that I've been an ironworker, union ironworker for over 20 years. And Scott Walker got elected in 2011 and proceeded to him and these extreme version of Republicans that we're seeing throughout the country now. They really started, I mean, in his own words, he dropped a bomb on Wisconsin workers. They went after public sector workers first. And a lot of us knew that just meant everybody has a place in line. So we got the private sector unions, everybody else to stand up and try to fight back against it. And we were unsuccessful, and we saw what happens when unlimited money gets involved into a campaign. And he managed to stay in office after we recalled him. And just until recently, the past election, we were able to replace him with Governor Tony Evers. But I got very involved in that fight. And Paul Ryan had been in the first district where I live for, it was over 20 years. And nobody had done more to go after Social Security, Medicare, other issues that really affected working people than Paul Ryan. And people had said, look, Randy, you've been such a strong voice standing up for working people. We think that you could bring people together and help take them out. So it took some amount of persuading to do it. But it got to the point where I'm like, look, this guy is just going to destroy us even more. And if I don't do it, who can I trust that's going to give their all to do it? So I hopped in, and thanks to a lot of other people coming together, we were able to chase him away, but we just didn't have enough votes to take the seat back, thanks to the gerrymandering in the state. But since then, it's been still, fighting. We're not where we need to be. And a lot of times I look at what people do when they run for office and they're not successful. What do? Do they disappear? You never see them again? Or are they going to do something, like you, running again? Because this guy, he needs to be taken out. He's just horrible. The Republicans won't even put him on any committees. So it's great having you in a state close by that, if we didn't have everything shut down and people staying at home, I'd love to be on that bus with you driving around getting people to vote for you.
Well, I appreciate that. We had the pleasure of meeting in was it Decorah in Winneshiek County. And the county Dems there had an event where we all went to the racetrack there, and it was a blast. I loved that. That was a lot of fun.
It was so much fun, and it was so great that I brought my son there, and he had never been to a race like that on a third track, and just being able to give out the awards. And I thought it was a fantastic event for the Dems to do there too, because it wasn't going around like in your face. It was a place where, a lot of conservative minded voters were, but just being able to interact and talk to them. Hi, how you doing? And seeing the Dems sponsor and give out awards. It was a fantastic event. It was great to see it happen.
Absolutely. And I always encourage Democrats to get out there too, and get out of your shell a little bit. And so I love the event. One thing about your site, your campaign in the cycle last time, your video went viral. Mm-hmm. And could you talk a little bit about that experience? Because I think that's where I first saw it, and man, did it bring tears to my eyes, and just a moving piece.
It still does. Every time I look at it, I still, or even think about getting choked up. But it was basically telling a story, and there wasn't anything, there's nothing special about me. I've been working my whole life. I've faced a lot of struggles that so many other people have. And I think what really hit home for a lot of people was like, there was some part of my story that was also part of their life experiences, whether, it's an aging mom that has medical issues, or themselves don't have good enough health coverage. And, in this country where there's so much money and so much wealth, it's really unbelievable how many workers are going without, and even more so now, what we have to deal with. But it was just saying, look, people, we all struggle, and nothing gets done, nothing gets built, nothing stays maintained unless the working people get it done. So let's look after us, and we're going to take care of everybody else.
Yeah, it was so moving for me, because as I moved along in the process of the cycle and running, it opens up to me, at least. You really realize that working class people like us are not, I don't know what the correct word is, but it's not geared for us the system's not set up for us to go to Washington. It's meant for people who have huge wealthy connections. And so I think that was one thing that we had a lot of success in last time, is saying, we talked all the time last cycle, saying the average person in Congress last cycle was over 50, what was it? It's 58 years old and a net worth of $1 million. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm different. I'm 20 years younger and about $1 million short of that average.
Right. And I mean, and it's so crazy. And we both know, we can speak to the amount of time it takes to try to raise that money. Whereas, if you already have that wealth, you're likely going to be in a different social circle. You have rich friends, you have friends that own companies. And as long as you offer something to people that have a lot of money, that have been in this game before, they're going to get something out of it. Whereas the people that I would ask, and like you too, that we would ask for help, they're causes that we already believe in, whether it's labor unions or, a local mom and pop store. We're like, look, we want to help you out. We need you in our community, and we'd love to have your support. So that's what it was about. And the fact too, that all these small dollar donations would come in, up against, like somebody like Paul Ryan, and just be able to chase him away, and then have somebody else come in and his super PAC, he's still so upset he's going to drop $7 million on attack ads on you. It's like, where you talk about how you're judged by the enemies that you make. I was feeling pretty good.
I remember the day he dropped out. It was my first, I had I think some sort of training in DC, and it was my first time going to DC as a candidate. And day one, he dropped out. I'm like, man, I'm doing this DC thing pretty good. I mean, I had nothing to do with it. It just one of those things.
He knew you were coming.
One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is, since your labor background and of the labor movement, what do you see happening in the labor movement these days? And one of the things that I see, I mean, it happened in Wisconsin, happens here in Iowa, and just the state attacks. But one of the things Congressman King, my opponent, constantly does is he attacks the Bacon Davis and so where do you see the movement happening right now, and what do you see that needs to get done too?
Well, that's really bizarre that anybody would be against Davis Bacon. And I mean, that was one thing that was, I think, the only issue that Paul Ryan was good on. And so some of the labor unions that we would talk, and they're like, well, we feel that we can't go against him because, having a Republican that supports Davis Bacon, we don't want to get rid of that, or we don't want to jeopardize that, especially in the position he was in. But I mean, and basically all it does for people that aren't aware is that it was put in place after the Depression, because you had all these fly-by-night contractors trying to soak up all this work when we were building our infrastructure, what made us into a superpower. And they were just doing a shoddy job. It was all about just getting the money and not doing the work. Yep. So when Davis Bacon came into place, it made sure that you didn't have these fly-by-night contractors that, that didn't pay into the benefits, whether it's workers' comp, whether it's unemployment insurance. they just didn't care. They never paid their workers what they were worth either. Some states took it, and it's known as prevailing wage within the states. And so any project over, I think it's like $2,000 that uses federal tax money has to abide by Davis-Bacon, which says that there's this prevailing rate. And like for the state prevailing wage, you send out a survey, and 75%, when it was still in place in Wisconsin, was recently taken away, thanks to Scott Walker and the extreme Republicans. But it said that, it was a survey, and like over half, 75% of the businesses that were surveyed were non-union contractors that still paid, a fair rate on these jobs. If you're talking about like a highway project throughout the entire state, that means you're going to be away from home too, probably quite frequently. And if you're just getting paid peanuts, you're not going to be able to eat. You're not going to have a place to stay. So basically it's protecting the workers. And so that's why to see anybody attacking it right now means that the basic wage that we're paying people, that's too much for them. So that means that they want to get away with paying workers less and exploit workers, which is something that it just doesn't make any sense.
Right. In talking about exploiting workers, and right now the biggest topic here in the state of Iowa is the meat packing plants. Oh. And I have a number of statistics here that just came out this morning. We have there's different plants throughout the state. There's 4 major outbreaks. Sioux City has been an immigrant meat packing town since the 1880s. And we, this county, Woodbury County, along with Dakota County, Nebraska, have well over 2,000 people tested positive for COVID-19. I think 660 came from the meat packing plant in Dakota City, Nebraska. A lot of those people live over here as well. And so we're having a huge outbreak here, but across the state of Iowa, Columbus Junction, it says their plant has 221 people who tested positive. That's 26% of their plant. In Tama, 258, that's 39% of their plant. Waterloo, 444, that's 17% of their plant. Perry, Iowa is the biggest shocker, 730, that's almost 60% of their plant. That's 50%. And then in Newton, 131, and that's 13% of the plant. And so it's such injustice and inhumane of what's happening in these places. And I wrote an op-ed about my opposition to the president's executive order on keeping these open. And I understand the farmers wanting to get their livestock out and everything like that. But if we don't have these workers, if they're all sick, this plant's not going to run anyways. And so the whole food system, I think there's a spotlight right now on 2 issues. One, it's healthcare, because if our neighbor down the street, whether their employer doesn't offer healthcare or they can't afford it, that affects the whole neighborhood right now. And the other part of it is our food systems. And we're seeing just the lack of the dignity of work and the lack of respect for these workers. And for a long time, these meatpacking plants, you see the money that is made, they're price fixing, and they're really giving farmers a raw deal on the price. And so the money they make, it goes to their stockholders and to Wall Street, and it doesn't really get back to the consumer. So it's 3 people hurting right now. It's the consumer, it's the workers, and it's the farmers. And so I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about your thoughts on these plants and kind of what I don't know, just your opinion on it.
Well, it's scary. It's time to open up Upton Sinclair's The Jungle. Talk about, meatpacking people. That's not easy work. That's a dangerous job. And you're lucky if you can go through your career and keep all your fingers attached because of it. A lot of times it's immigrant, that come in and do that kind of work. Just today, I know before we went live, I was talking to you about our conservative justice for the Wisconsin State Supreme Court, who is, the Republicans are challenging Governor Evers' stay-at-home law. And she came right out and said that, well, it was brought up in one area that there was an outbreak. A lot of people had been connected with the virus, with COVID. And she came out and she said that, well, it's a result of people who work in meatpacking plants. It's not regular folks that we're talking about. Just that kind of mindset.
Right.
It really upsets me. But that's what we're dealing with today, and it's like the same thing with a lot of these people that are saying we want that you hear saying we want to reopen everything up. We want all the businesses to be reopened. You don't see them at any of these protests. It's,
right.
And look at who's funding them too.
Yeah.
It's not people that do the work. It's people that depend on others to do the work is where these are all being funded. But to have something in place like a meatpacking plant, I mean, no place needs a union more than those kinds of facilities where, and that's one of the things that I've always appreciated about you. Before this was happening, you had the pulse of the heartbeat on the farmers in Iowa, which I identified with a lot because, farming is a big deal in Wisconsin as well. But going back to this, excuse me, there's no better place for a union, because if you look at right now what's going on when the places where people are going back to work that are considered essential, look how we were treating them before, whether it's fast food, and all of a sudden they're considered essential, but we're still not offering them enough money just to live. Right. I hear some places $2 an hour extra hazard pay, which is nice to offer something.
Yeah.
But how is their healthcare plan? How essential do they feel, about themselves by what their employer is offering to them?
And are they offering testing? I read a story about that plant in Perry and this was about mid-March, when they said that they're fine, or it was, I don't know, early to mid-March, and they said, oh, if a worker feels sick, they can go home. So are you saying beforehand, if they weren't sick, they weren't allowed to go home? Like even just that, I mean, just in normal times, let alone a global pandemic.
And that's another thing too, is that a lot of these workers that we only know that they're carrying it because they've been tested. So how many people do we have walking around now that are asymptomatic, showing no signs of it, feel fine, but they're spreading it everywhere? Right. So we can't, we need to concentrate. I keep hearing from Donald Trump that we're doing more testing than every place else. And I don't know one person personally that has been tested that I've talked to. So let's get these tests that we've been promised. Let's work on getting this vaccine, because when people are tested, even if they don't have symptoms, if you're covered by a vaccine, you're going to be able to go around and not spread it around. So it's, but there's just too much of a rush, and it's been politicized to the fact where, like, we have the president that has turned these COVID, I call them press rallies, because he's not going around, waving the Trump flags and giving out red hats in big packed stadiums. So this is what he's doing now, getting up and on national airwaves and lying to us, because he's more worried about being reelected than he is about saving American lives. And now coming up to where we're going to have like 3,000 people every day die.
Yeah. That's
it's scary. It's scary. And that's why it's more important now to have people, representatives that understand what working people are going through, and being willing to fight, like you are, and other candidates throughout the country. Just imagine if we had a majority every place where, what time is better than now during this pandemic, right, to switch things up, to make sure that workers are taken care of, because that's going to help our economy just explode. Once people have extra money, you don't have to catch up on catching up to your rent or your insurance, other bills like that. If once we're safe to go, if people don't have all these other debts to worry about, that's going to help everybody get as close back to normal as we possibly can.
A couple of things you mentioned there. When you mentioned Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, written in 1906, we're more concentrated now than we were back then. Mm-hmm. And that hurts worker. the same three that I mentioned before. It hurts workers, it hurts consumers, it hurts farmers. Storm Lake here in this district is a meatpacking town, and their high school has over 17 languages. And they've really embraced the immigrant workforce there. And it's one of the cities that we tend to spotlight, and a lot of it gets written about it. But right before I launched my campaign in 2017, there was a story in some national newspaper that talked about this gentleman who went to work for the union in one of these plants in the early 80s and was paid $16 an hour. And in the mid 80s, there was a big deunionize all throughout the meatpacking industry in this part of the state, and immediately prices dropped and about down to $6 an hour. And he ended up retiring just a couple of years ago at $16 an hour, the same wage that he started at almost 4 decades earlier.
Wow.
And it's just it's one of those things where in this district, we don't value work. We have a ton of $12 an hour jobs. And as a Democratic Party, we talk about raising the minimum wage. 100% I'm for it. But what we need in this district are those $60, $70, and $80,000 jobs. Those are game changers. And what you're seeing, especially what I'm seeing here in Sioux City since I moved back, when I moved back a couple of years ago, the best job I could find in what I did was $15 an hour, no benefits. And if I'm a high school graduate right now, it makes far more sense if I want to stay in Sioux City to join a union than it is to go to college or maybe do both. But the best jobs around here right now seems to be the union jobs on a much greater scale. So.
And I mean, another thing too is one of the things I appreciated as a union iron worker was, I mean, and that's why the Ironworkers Union started. And it was a group of guys because our work is dangerous. It's, among the top 10 most dangerous professions in the United States. And a bunch of guys got together, old school iron workers, and pooled their money together so that when one died, there was enough money to bury them.
Yeah.
And then saw how by standing together, it was like, look, why, if we refuse to work, if there's a work condition that's not safe, and we all stand together and say, this job isn't going to, move an inch forward until you fix this. That's, that was beginnings of our union. And so we saw what the solidarity of standing together could do. And thankfully, it's been a great relationship with the employers that we have, because like now our apprenticeship board consists of, they meet the first Monday of every month, and it's 5 contractor representatives, 5 representatives from the union. We sit down and we talk about, what kinds of jobs are you going to bid on coming up, so that we can train our workforce to do it, because we understand that if we don't make a lot of money for those employers, those signatory contractors, they're going to go out of business.
Right.
And in return, they take care of us. They have the safety equipment. They follow the rules. And it's great knowing that not only do you have an entire organization have your back that you can call if something's wrong, if there's something that's not being addressed, you have that representation. And, not, if you don't belong to a union, you don't always have that. And you can be fired for being afraid of trying to save your life. And who wants to go to work thinking that, even if you're healthy and you're not at that age bracket that's very susceptible to catching COVID, there's still the chance that you're gonna bring it back home and share it with your family. And what good is that if you end up dying trying to make a living? It
Right.
just doesn't make sense. So having that union that has your back, and all the other coworkers too, that was one thing I really love about the job site, is everybody has your back. You're doing the same thing. You want to get the job done. You want to do a good job. But it's all about taking care of your family, and you can't do that if you're sick.
Right. This leads into a great question by Fran Parr. Hi, Fran. Hope you're doing well. First, shout out to the Iron Worker local 21, work in the western side of our state.
All right.
And they've
Local
been
21.
supporters of our campaign. Second, my husband is an iron worker, currently laid off. I have serious concerns about those in the trades and how they'll be supported for a safe return and to work conditions. What does Mr. Bryce see happening for union and non-unionized worker protections in the COVID era?
Well, I've been seeing, I've been in contact. I know for a while out on the East Coast, they had closed some job sites. But it looks like depends on where you are, whether it's going to be essential work or not. And I know that there are schedules that you have to get done because come wintertime and in certain areas, you just can't work and everything slows down. You want to get the building closed up so that you can do all the inside work once the colder months hit. And that does make it a lot safer too, getting that building closed up so that you can work when you can feel your fingers. But a lot of the things, I mean, and again, it goes back to like the masks that are being used. The contractors had them because we work, whether we're cutting or welding with dangerous, conditions where fumes are being brought forward. They're there. And it was always the clown, like the guy that had to have a cigarette that would, talk about, I feel like cutting a hole in here so I can smoke a cigarette through my mask. But for the most part, I mean, they're there. And the only thing I would say is, because we always work with partners, you work with another person so that if you do get hurt, there's somebody there that can help you out. It's always like with the buddy system. I mean, as far as, and I can't say that we ever aside from being like in a basket lift, being in really close proximity, working together, it's just, I mean, again, it's going to come down to, we need to have testing available and we need to have vaccines for the workers. The unions have always been good about, making sure that the conditions are safe, because the elected officers, they have to do their job. If they don't, they're going to get replaced come, next elections that come around.
Yeah.
So for everything I've heard, I have not heard anything, anything negative about the unions, whether it's or going like even a union grocery store, which the one I go to, where they've gotten on top of it really quick. It's they don't require people to wear masks in the aisles. So I felt like the last time I was there, and I go maybe once every 3 weeks, I just get stuff I really need, because I felt like I was playing Pac-Man, go down the wrong aisle, and here comes one of the things with, somebody without a mask coming towards you. It's like, oh, got to turn around, go down the other aisle. But the workers the last time I was there, they're at the entrance. They closed one of the entrances, so you can only go in one way. But there's somebody there spraying down the cart, the handles. Here you go. They got the masks, and the same thing when they take them back in, everything's wiped down, and they're real conscious about what's going on. That's part of the culture. That's the union culture, where it's, workers understand that by being a part of organized labor, your life means something to other people, and that is contagious. That spreads around, that you're going to make sure other people are safe as well. And when you're taken care of, you tend to take care of others.
Yeah, exactly. We got another good question here from Jose Ibarra, who's a council member in Storm Lake. And hey, Jose, how do we keep the food supply going without endangering not only the lives of workers at the plant, but also the livelihood of the farmers, the feed producers, the truckers who are carrying the animals, et cetera? What ideas do you have? And I think this is a great question. For one of the things that in the trucks that I think a lot of people don't understand is, when you unload and load the livestock, it takes 4 workers usually, and it's close proximity. And then when you get to the plant line, everything's the assembly line and everything. It's all right there, and they're on top of each other. And so I think we don't get to a place where it's health or safe without the testing. I think testing is the number one thing. So I don't know. What are your thoughts?
No, I absolutely agree. I mean, and if the government is going to determine that something is so essential, then you need to make sure that they have basic essential PPE equipment to get the job done. Right. Because I know with once you become an at-will state and once right to work is enacted, which I know Iowa's had and recently in Wisconsin too, where I mean somebody was complaining that they were laid off, they were furloughed because their boss saw them participate in one of the protests. So they were complaining, and it was like, well, that's, you know, it's the same person that was standing there saying unions are horrible. Unions are horrible. It's like, well, look, it's because of that. It's because we're a right to work state now. You don't have any rights. You know, right to work doesn't involve any rights, and it doesn't involve any more work whatsoever either. But no, and it's so, you know, again, it comes down to, if these people are so essential, prove it. Just basic things to make sure they can do their job and live, and don't, you know, and that's the thing too, we're talking about, if you don't go to work, if your business is deemed to be essential and you refuse to go to work because you're afraid that none of the no safety has been enacted to keep you alive, that's considered a quit, where you know, it's not a layoff, it's not a furlough, you're refusing to go to work based on your state's laws, and that's completely wrong. Or I mean, how good of a job do you think somebody's going to do if they're terrified of you know, a coworker, of catching the COVID virus from a coworker? They're not going to do a good job. They're going to have their mind on something else. But on the other hand, just think about the you know, how you're going to feel to have everything in place. You know, you're going to feel good. It's like, look, my boss cares about me. I want to do a good job. We're helping feed a country in a time of crisis. And there's no, I can't imagine any other time when people would want to come together and look after each other. But it seems, you know, that's still not the case. That's still not this case. And it really is terrifying in some aspects.
Absolutely. And it just gets back to the dignity of work and
Yes.
creating the system. And this is what I expect, or whether it's the governor or other leaders, to work with the people who own the plants and saying, okay, this is the plan. This is what needs to happen. If go through and say, this is where the person has to stand. The next person can't stand this close. Like, go through every plant and show the testing, show the proper equipment that we have to keep everyone safe. Have that all laid out. I mean, this, I don't think it's that hard. It's except if we don't have the capability of protecting our workers, then the plant shouldn't be open.
Right.
That's the bottom line.
Right.
But when we do have the capability, let's set that system up. One last thing before I let you, I got two last things. The first thing, you're from Wisconsin, got to talk about dairy. They recently, the DFA and Dean Foods merged. I know you're more from the urban part, I believe, right? Yeah.
Yes.
But with dairy, we've just seen, I mean, in the last decade, year after year, hundreds of dairy farms shrinking and shrinking, and we have these policies of get bigger, get off the farm. Is there, do you know much that there, I guess what's in the papers and everything of talking about the merger or just dairy farms in general?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know as much about the merger, but I can tell you that with Donald Trump's policies, we've had an average of 2 family farms close every single day. Average. And so every time I see him tweet out something or talk about how great he's doing for the farmers, nothing could be further from the truth. And, you know, we had a state ag secretary too, that all of the Republican senators seemed to like, and they were going to confirm the person. But because of all these closings of the family farms every day, the person said, look, I'd like to request in my position in this role as state ag secretary of some money for suicide prevention, because farmers are, you know, committing suicide at unbelievable rates. And so then all of a sudden it was like, wait, you can't ask for more money to help the farmers. And they decided, no, this isn't going to be our person. So they said no, and they didn't confirm. But the person now is running for, I believe it's a state Senate seat. So Hopefully that'll help get people fired up. But no, I mean, Wisconsin, it's known as being a dairy state, and just to see that and to have all that land and everything get eaten up by big corporations, and people from outside of the United States too are coming in and buying up the land, and that's not helping Wisconsin farmers at all. It's doing the exact opposite.
Well, and that's one area where what we're really seeing from a lot of candidates in that Senate memo that got passed around DC, the Republican Senate candidates, they're talking about getting tough on China. But you look at, I look at my current congressman, Steve King, and he likes to talk a big game, but you look at in the agriculture sector, we've allowed mergers, especially from international companies, whether it's China or Brazil, to come in and dictate our agriculture society. 1 in 4 hogs in the United States and in Iowa is owned by China. And
wow.
And 85% of talking about the meatpacking plants and everything, 85% of the market in beef is controlled by just 4 companies, and 2 of them are from Brazil. And it's so when I hear these, and you're going to hear it more and more about getting tough on China, well, it's these same people that have allowed our agriculture industry to get revamped and to go from being local, where we're helping our neighbors, where we're allowing farmers to stay on their land, to these get bigger, get off the farm policies. And one of the areas that I'd love to talk about is apple juice. Apple juice, 60% of our apple juice, it comes from China right now. And wow. It makes no sense, because you look at Wisconsin, I know there's a lot of orchards there. Even in the 4th district, we're not known for our apples, but we have enough orchards here to probably provide apple juice for all the kids and all the people who want it here in the state. And it just makes no sense. And it's all policy driven, or mostly policy driven.
Well, and then too, and then you look at something that we used to sell a lot of earlier on in Trump's term, where where you had all these tariffs and it was like, we're going against China. Well, we used to sell, Wisconsin was like the #1 ginseng producer in the country. Yeah. And so that got cut off with China. So they stopped buying from us, and instead they started buying from elsewhere. And, that business is never going to come back here.
Right.
It's gone. It's gone. So when you have policies that are so horrible that they're going to permanently affect, at least in my lifetime, going to affect that industry in such a negative way, it's time to really change the leadership.
Absolutely. So, well, Randy, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to us today. I know the folks, you can't see them, but I'm sure they're clapping and appreciate your time and your words.
It's always great talking with you, JD. I looked forward when I found out you were going to be at the racetrack too. I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be fun. And then it was great seeing you, like in Iowa too, earlier this year, late last year too, just randomly running into you. And
those caucuses bring people together.
And it's, and I got to say, I'm a little bit jealous just because I'd never participated in all that before. And it was like, holy cow. It's like, I've never experienced anything like that. Just having, and especially so much with all the candidates that we had too running for president.
Right.
But no, it was something else. It was really exciting and really great to meet more people in Iowa. And, if they don't elect you, I have no idea what's going on, because like I said, it's, what's going on as far as the people in your district with the farmers not being able to make more money because of just the way things are.
Yeah.
So it's, and then again, having the nemesis that you do, somebody like, Representative King, who's not on any committees and just a terrible representative. He is the opposite of everybody that I've met in Iowa. The hardworking people that are proud of what they do, and they work hard. And through it gets cold like it does here. So summer, winter, people are still busting their backsides, doing a good job. There's that pride there. And I can't think of any better representative than you, JD. So
I appreciate it, Randy.
keep swinging, and anything I can do. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise.
Anything I
Likewise.
can do to help you out, I'm here, brother.
I appreciate it. Well, you stay safe.
as well.
Stay hot, Ben, and take care.
All right, you too, JD. Take care.